We've all heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, but the thing that we often forget is that it also takes one to support the mother.
Well, speaking of the village, this is our podcast. I'm Nicole Harlow.
And I'm Dawn Thompson, and we're here to connect you with a village of support you need from pregnancy to parenting.
So come on this journey with us as we build your village one episode at a time. All right, hello. We are here today. My name is Nicole Harlow, joined by my beautiful co-host, Dawn Thompson, and our new friend, Renelle Olchowski. She is from Canada. So we are going to talk today all about some care differences between the US and Canada, and then just also overall importance of birth prep, education before birth, and how it can impact your outcome and experience. So Renelle, can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Renelle Olchowski. I am from Canada. I'm actually from Saskatchewan, but I'm living on the East Coast right now. So across the country, but I am a birth educator, birth coach, as well as a doula. And what I do is I guide moms through birth prep, helping them to take charge of their birth so that they can be confident, prepared, and have a more positive birth story. And so I really find by preparing parents with the right tools and education and the right mindset when we work together, we can navigate labor confidently and reduce fear so that they essentially are in control of their birth.
I love that. So a huge topic, I think, is fear, right? Fear-based outcomes, right? We were on an episode recently where we were just talking about how even the providers are fearful, right? Because of the outcomes that happen and then the repercussions that happen with them if there was a bad outcome, in the sense of, mortality or transfusions or other medical happenstances. But I think what they don't take into account is the opposite of that, right? The prevention, the intervention, all of that then creates trauma, creates bad outcome, negative birth stories, right? The stuff that you as a doula and birth coach are trying to prepare the woman to combat, essentially. And it's almost like this just vicious cycle that all stems from fear. So how do you, as a birth coach and a birth doula, really navigate that? How does it start? What do you think, your moms, what's that main thing that you try to educate them on to resist fear?
A lot of the moms, and I say moms, but I work with couples. I think partners are really important in the birth prep and with that mitigation of the fear and the risk. So a lot of clients that I work with are actually maybe second, third birth, and they've had that traumatic birth, sometimes 2 traumatic births, and now they find themselves pregnant again with a lot of fear. And that was me too. My first birth was quite traumatic, and it actually happened, as you can imagine, 6 weeks before COVID. So 6 weeks before the world shut down, and my baby was 6 weeks. I was just oh, I'm ready to go meet people and take my baby out, and then the world shut down. So then it was a whole other probably topic that we could talk about. And so it was just not a great overall journey into motherhood. And then I found myself pregnant again. My baby was 12 months or a year old. And so I really had to work through a lot of fears, having a birth during COVID, but having that past birth experience. So a lot of the parents that I work with, it's a reflection of me too, in some ways. Traumatic birth experience. A lot of families right now are having their second or third babies, having had babies during COVID. And so, it's just starting back at the beginning. And it's not so much about forgetting our first or traumatic birth experiences. It's about what went well, what didn't go so well, and how can we create this vision for your next birth and essentially manifest your dream birth, or the birth that you actually deserve and that you can have, whether it's at home, at the hospital, or whatever setting it ends up being. I think just going back to the beginning and starting the birth prep over and taking small steps throughout the birth prep.
So I think this is an important thing to actually point out, because I'm hoping that there's a lot of first-time moms that are listening to this right now. And that is understanding. I as a doula, I was in practice for many years, and it was the same thing. Second moms in particular were my primary client. And I think that that's really unfortunate, because you can avoid and have a better experience with your first one if you get this kind of support. And I think, and in one of the questions that we ask at the end of this podcast always is, speaking of the village, who's the one thing that people need in their village? And I can tell you that many of our episodes already have said doula, and a doula has been mentioned. Even the obstetrician we just talked to said a doula is critically important. And I think that that's the thing I want to emphasize here is, like, don't wait. Don't wait for your second birth. Don't wait. And I was just saying, I actually had this moment this weekend where I was really frustrated and upset, because I got a message from a friend of mine, an acquaintance actually, and she was just messaging me because her daughter-in-law had her first baby, and it was a really traumatic experience, and she's really suffering postpartum. And I was just like, gosh darn, I actually, because of course I just started venting to my husband, because I was just like, she knows me. She knows what I do for a living. And instead of getting that support before she had the baby, now we're looking for how do we fix this after the baby is born, when the reality is she needed us before